Good afternoon, everyone. We are ready for our breakout session that we're going to be having in the main room here. We are a couple minutes into our time, so if you don't mind, if you can kind of gather in a little bit more towards the center, we're going to do some interaction with our author here shortly. I just want to kind of build our community a little bit tighter if you can move in closer. So for this afternoon's breakout session in the main room here, we have acclaimed and esteemed author Angela Joy. Angela Joy is going to be joining us virtually, and I can assure you that she tried extremely hard to join us in person, but her latest book and the book that'll be featured during this afternoon session, it has won yet another award. So we could physically not get her from here to Washington, D.C., where she needs to be tomorrow. So for a little bit of background, and we'll get into some more of this shortly, because I want to get us started right away. But the book that's featured this afternoon is Choosing Brave: How Mamie Till-Mobley and Emmit Till Sparked the Civil Rights Movement. And my copy, if you'll notice, does not have all the accolades on it. Since this book has been published, it has won the Caldecott Honor, the Coretta Scott King Award, the Robert F. Sibert Honor Book, and then tomorrow, Angela Joy will be accepting the Walter Dean Award for Outstanding Children's Literature. So originally from Minneapolis, Minnesota, Angela Joy is near and dear to my heart. She did a lot of amazing work with my district previously, which I think we'll probably share a little bit more about shortly. But I want to not delay any longer and share with you Angela Joy.
Hello, hello, hello. Good morning, everyone. I am hoping that you can see and hear me. Miss Saylor, if you're still up there, can you see and hear me?
We can. Thank you, Angela.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate the invitation to be here with you virtually today. It's a shame that I can't give a hug or a handshake. I hate it in my heart. But I do thank God for the Zoom technology that allows me to be there in spirit. And I am thankful for the opportunity to share with you our latest book called Choosing Brave.
Angela, can you hear me?
Yes.
We are unable to hear the audio. It's very faint. I don't know, if you have headphones plugged in, that sometimes helps me, but I am not an expert. There we go. That works.
And the ones who cut me, shot me with a gun, and threw me in the river like I was trash when they were done. I'll send back to my mother at least what left of me. She kept my casket open for the whole wide world to see. The awful desecration and the evidence of him.
morning again. I use this song because it tells stories so well in a short amount of time with the passion that the story deserves. I believe that picture books can do the same on many topics, condensing the very important facts into a short amount of time while still allowing the full information to be shared with its audience. We have done that with our book, Emmit Till. Sorry, that song always kills me, even now, in this moment. So when we think of brave, we typically think about superheroes. I certainly did as a child. I remember standing in the living room of our townhome, spinning, spinning, spinning with my eyes closed, trying to imagine what the magic words might be to turn me into Wonder Woman. That's who I really, really wanted to be when I was small. Today, our Wonder Woman is much fiercer, much more fierce, sorry. And we have many female leads, many African-American leads that children of all backgrounds can hopefully identify with. So we see these heroes, we think this must be what bravery is. Or perhaps we think of bravery in the context of a job or a career. We think of fire people as being brave. Of course, that is true. We think about our men and women in the military and the bravery that it takes to sign up, to go into battle, to be away from home for months and months at a time, sometimes years. That takes tremendous bravery and sacrifice. We also think of hobbies as being brave. Here, we see a friend jumping out of an airplane. That would be considered brave. We have this lovely person swimming with a great white shark. Absolutely brave. But I did not consider that this little old lady would be my ideal of brave until I began to write her story. She's my hero now. Mamie Till-Mobley was the mother of Emmit Till, and her bravery inspired our book, Choosing Brave, How Mamie Till-Mobley and Emmit Till Sparked the Civil Rights Movement. Mamie Elizabeth Carthen was a child of the Great Migration, up from Mississippi with her family, in search of a better life. A life with a little less fear, a life with a little more freedom. Is that brave? This page is referring to the Great Migration. We can go a lot of different directions with the Great Migration. We can touch on American history, Michigan history, social studies, human geography. There's a ton of poetry and there are novels about the Great Migration. So there's a lot of different ways that we can talk about this, but just a few short facts for our setting here today. In the early 20th century, strict legislation limited immigration to the United States and brought about a shortage of labor in many industrial and manufacturing centers in the Northeast and Midwest. These cities became common destinations for Black migrants from the South. It's estimated that 6 million people came to the North and the Midwest between 1910 and about 1970 in two primary waves. In the deck of resources that you will receive after the presentation, you will see there are primary sources that show a lot of information on the Jim Crow practices that these people were fleeing from. They weren't just coming to the North and the West for jobs, although that was very important. Many were fleeing life-threatening situations. Jim Crow, segregation, the KKK was in full bloom. And so many people found it safer to move north. At least they dreamed that it would be safer. And so with the primary source set that I am providing here from the Library of Congress, you can discuss with your students more about Jim Crow and segregation and the reasons for the Great Migration. Visually, we have a map here of the, I believe it's called the distribution of the colored population of the United States in 1890. So we see the high concentration in what used to be slave states. But then during the migration, we see the movement here from the South into the cities of the North and Midwest. Detroit, of course, being one of them. So because we're speaking to a Michigan crowd, I thought I'd throw in just a few facts about the Great Migration that are specific to Michigan. Prior to the Great Migration, the earliest written record of a Black person in Detroit is 1736. From 1920 to 1930, the Black population nearly quadruples to 150,000. From 1910 to 1920, the Black community in Detroit multiplies sevenfold. Idlewild is founded in 1912 and becomes a resort for Black elite. Many famous people coming to the area to relax, to enjoy some recreation with their families in the safety of this secluded Michigan spot. Back to the story now. Mamie was glad to be in Argo, outside of Chicago, where a girl could roam free. But that didn't mean life was easy. 11 years old was hard. Daddy pressed a buffalo nickel in the palm of Mamie's hand and walked away. He never did come back. 14 was hard. Boys in school were cruel, and not every teacher was kind. Still, Mamie found comfort in her studies: science, Latin, geometry, poetry, reliable subjects, loyal, true. Diploma in hand, Mamie was unusual indeed, the first African-American to graduate at the top of her class. Yet the best of grades couldn't hush what she heard on street corner and pew. Can't catch a man with a book, they said. Better marry somebody soon. I find this so interesting because children today don't realize the pressures that women were under in the 1940s, 50s, and prior. This was a time when many of Mamie's classmates dropped out of school to get married or to go to work to support the family that they'd started. But Mamie stayed in school. That was brave. A little bit about the women's rights during the Great Depression that Mamie grew up in. The right to vote for women was just passed. So 1920. Women had had the right to vote for 20 years or so. Not a long time. And there was still great pressure for Black women, Black people in general, to not vote. The Civil Rights Act, Right to Vote Act had not been passed yet. So it was a double whammy for African-American women. In 1940, 26.3% of all women graduated high school. 8.4% were Black. 8.4%. So again, this is incredible. It's easy to gloss over the fact that Mamie graduated high school. We give her a little praise for being at the top of her class, but for her to graduate at all was astounding. The national rate was 8.4%. And she was at an integrated school. So this is huge. To stand in the face of all that was expected and say, no, thank you, was brave. In this time, bank credit was not extended to women without a male cosigner. I was shocked to read that that was a thing until 1974. A year before I was born, women would have to have a cosigner in order to get a credit card or in order to apply for a mortgage to her home. So you see the pressure that was on women at this time to get married. If you couldn't get a job that paid the same amount as a man, if you couldn't buy your own home, if you couldn't get credit at the local store, how would you survive without a man? It's daunting. Women were fired once they got married. It was called the marriage bar. The national age for women to become married was about 21 years old. And you'll see red throughout is the color of Mamie, the sacrifice that she has made, the passion that she felt, the love that she felt. So as we go, you'll see her color red. If folks hadn't pushed so hard, Mamie just might have found somebody other than an amateur boxer by the name of Louis Till. Louis came round and around till Mommy finally let her go, just up the street, just for a banana split. Mamie wasn't aware that Louis planned on eating there, right in the middle of all those white folks. That is not how it worked. Not even in Argo, outside of Chicago, where a girl could roam free. The owner was furious. Mama would be too, yet while still afraid, Mamie stayed. It was the braver thing. In Argo, at this time, it was commonplace for the Black residents to order their food and pick it up in the back, take it to go. They weren't generally allowed to come into the restaurant at all unless they were, of course, staff. This is what Mamie expected when she went to get that banana split that day. Her boyfriend, a boxer, physically fit, pretty cocky, decided that was the day he was going to go inside and sit down. And Mamie could have taken that cue and said, okay, at the door, I am going home to my mother and you can do this on your own, but she didn't. She stayed. And because the two of them stayed, other people passing by could see them and they said, oh my goodness, well, they've desegregated the restaurant. Let's go inside. And couples started coming in. So this one small act of bravery, just the act of deciding to stay, the act of sitting down, desegregated the restaurant from that point forward. It changed an entire community. So our brave actions have large implications, even in the smallest of settings. I like to share with kids that when you think about Mamie, she seems very brave. She's 17, 18 years old, but she says in her memoir that when she went with Louis that day, she was intent on not sharing her banana split. She thought that inherently a banana split meant you had to split the banana. That's how naive she was. She didn't know that a banana split was an entire dessert, more than she could possibly eat alone. She'd never had one. So she was so naive. She was so young, and yet she made this tremendous decision that changed the community. Mamie married Louis just shy of 19. 9 months later, a baby of their own, Emmit Louis Till. It was a long and difficult birth. Bruised, scarred, swollen, he entered the world the hard way. With little hope that he would ever walk, talk, or learn, doctors set out to place Emmit in an institution, but Mamie couldn't leave him behind. She had to bring her baby home. It was the harder thing. What's so brave about that? What's so brave about bringing a baby home? Sure, having a baby at all is, super scary, and not leaving it at the hospital is, brave. They don't come with instructions. They're very needy, and it's scary because we don't speak the same language. So yes, just bringing a baby home is scary, but Mamie did it against the advice of her doctors. During the first half of the 20th century in the United States, the majority of children with Down syndrome were placed in institutions. Frequently soon after birth, this resulted in great human sacrifice for those individuals. Can you imagine? They were convinced, often by members of the medical community, that the child was less than human and that their needs would be so great their families would not be able to raise them. These children were warehoused in large state institutions, often in deplorable conditions, locked away, so that the rest of society could not see the horror of their lives. so that the rest of society wouldn't be burdened with their presence. It's a horrible thing. We don't do that now, thank goodness. But can you imagine? There are lots of reasons one could be committed to an institution during this time. Some of the ones I found most interesting, the most interesting diagnoses was feeble-mindedness, acute melancholy, epilepsy, polio, depression, female disease, smallpox, brain fever, indigence, egotism, kicked in the head by a horse, true story, or grief. Our nation's institutions were filled with children like Emmit. In those days, the standard operating procedure in hospitals was for physicians to advise parents to institutionalize their newborn infants with Down syndrome. Parents who did not follow this advice took their babies home without support or services. That was brave. Yet with love on every side, Emmit grew. Despite the doctor's warnings, limbs stretched long and strong on an ever clever boy, a child quick to hustle and smile. Emmit in the center picture is on the far right, on the bicycle by himself. His cousin Wheeler is riding the other bicycle with a neighborhood baby. They ran all day outside together, as children should. In the bottom two pictures there are of Emmit in his best dress. Mamie always made sure that he was clean and in style. He was her pride and joy. When the milkman came, Emmit collected bottles. The work was hard, but the reward was sweet. When the iceman came, Emmit ran ahead. The quarter he earned felt cool on summer skin. Now, this begs a really interesting question. What the heck is a milkman? We don't have milkmen anymore, but they were a very important part of our society at one time. Customers would place their orders with the milkman and would have fresh milk delivered to their doorsteps every day. This was very green, right? Because they reused those bottles again and again and again. So there was no waste. There were no cartons and jugs thrown into landfills. This was a very economic way to bring milk to those who needed it, and butter as well, cream. Many types of dairy were delivered to families, often through refrigerated doors. And that was also the time when grocery stores weren't on every corner. So this was really a very important service. We also talked about the iceman. What the heck is an iceman? Same story with an iceman bringing the ice to the home. This is fascinating to think about, that big blocks of ice that one could barely carry alone were keeping our goods fresh for 24 to 48 hours only. But it wasn't until the 30s and 40s that refrigerators became commonplace in homes. So make it 40 or 50s for those who were not as financially fortunate. So the Iceman kept work for a long time. Wrapped in the arms of Argo outside of Chicago, Emmit roamed free. It was strange then when he came in before sunset, asking to rest a while. Mamie tried everything she knew, but when Emmit didn't get any better, she sent for help. The doctor called it polio. Here's some famous people with polio that the kids might relate to. Frida Kahlo had polio. Franklin Delano Roosevelt had polio. Wilma Rudolph had polio. These are all survivors of polio, although we know that many did not survive. In the slide deck, we will have access to an NPR article about polio in the United States, the development of the vaccine, which I think is very relevant right now as we're coming out of the COVID pandemic. Very similar. With steadfast faith and tender care, Emmit did recover, but the polio left a scar, an invisible reminder, a stutter of speech. From time to time, Emmit's tongue and mind got stuck on words like bubblegum, soda pop, or moon pie. But Mamie found a trick, a workaround. She told him to stop, take a breath, and whistle. Whistling calmed Emmit, steadied him, allowing him to finish what he started to say. Again, I bring in here people who children might know that had a stutter or still have a stutter. Tiger Woods, Ed Sheeran, Darth Vader, President Biden, and I think there, I can't remember the superhero now. I was going to try to remember the superhero that is the guy there, but it'll come to me. My apologies for that. But many people suffer with a stutter. And there was a time that that too came with a very negative societal toll. Thank goodness we have greater tolerance now. But I bring this into the classroom so that children can see that we all have differences about us, but that these differences should not stop us from doing and being all that we can be. So you know the story. Emmit went down south to visit relatives. One week and one day after Emmit boarded the Mississippi train, an early morning phone call. Words on the line that didn't make sense at all. Emmit was missing, stolen in the night. No one could say where he was. It was 3 days before fishermen found Emmit in the Tallahatchie. Bruised, scarred, swollen. He left the world the hard way. The laws of Jim Crow made it unsafe for Black boys to roam free. It would have been easy then to go to sleep beside him, to save her pain for privacy, to bury Emmit quietly, but Mamie did the braver thing. She sounded the alarm. For 4 long days, she let the people come to bear witness, to mourn the sun erased for the sin of a sound, a stutter, a whistle, a laugh. This is one afternoon at the church for Emmett's wake. Nurses were on hand to help people who would faint from the heat or from the sight of Emmett's body. James Baldwin says that when he saw it, it changed his life. It motivated him to fight because this tragedy was just too much. 14-year-old boy lost for the sin of a sound. Reporters came to the funeral too to tell Emmett's story, to document Emmett's pain. The image reprinted on smooth and glossy paper said more with a flash than 10,000 words, lighting a match to a civil rights movement long primed to blow. City to city, town to town, people stood up and Rosa, sweet Rosa, sat down. We often talk about the single story. I heard the students talking about it earlier. We have a single story about Rosa Parks. People often think that she was just too tired to get up that day. She's just a little old seamstress that decided in the moment, nope, I'm not going to move. She has a much greater history before and after this moment, but she did confess to Mamie years later that when she was sitting on that bus, she couldn't move for the thought of what happened to Emmett Till. See, this leads us to believe that the civil rights movement was started not by men, as is often reported, not by Martin Luther King, Thurgood Marshall, Malcolm X. Much love to the brothers, but they didn't start it. It was 2 women, 2 mothers. And when we don't share this story, as painful as it is, we deprive our children of knowing that tremendous fact, that women were the foundation of the civil rights movement. I think that's important. After Emmett's death, Mamie couldn't wither. It wasn't her way. Grasping at what she knew to be true, science, Latin, geometry, poetry, Mamie returned to school. Ah, the value of education. While studying to be a teacher, Mamie married Emmet's longtime barber and friend, Gene Mobley, a gentleman who stood with Mamie through the ugliest days. He never walked away. Together, they made a patchwork family to warm the place where Emmett used to be. In the years that followed, Mamie poured life and love into community, helping students no one else could reach, visiting the victims of violence, working for social change. She taught the speeches of Dr. King to young performers after school. She called them the Emmit Till Players. In turn, they called her Mother Mobley. Together, they traveled the country, winning honor and applause along the way. There's a corner at the end of a long hallway, guarded by monuments and martyrs where a casket lays, left open to remind us of the harder thing that changed everything and the woman who came through it. Let the people see what I have seen. We have averted our eyes for too long. Everyone needs to know what happened to Emmett Till. You will notice there's other names here. In my mind, we can exchange Emmett Till's name for Tamir Rice, Trayvon Martin, Freddie Gray, George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Sunderland. Everyone needs to know what happened here. But we write the story not just because of the tragedy. It was important to us to show the humanity of Emmett and Mamie. They're more than just symbols. They're more than just names thrown out in the media after a march. These were two fully developed people who meant so much to each other. They were a team. They pretty much grew up together, Mamie being almost 19 when Emmett was born. Mamie's mother pretty much raised them together. Mamie said they often felt like siblings. They fought like siblings for sure. But then when Mamie moved to Chicago and took Emmett with her, they were a team. Emmett's father had been killed overseas, so it was just the two of them. And so Mamie would go to work and Emmett would pay the bills and he would clean up the house and he would have dinner ready for them when she came home. I mean, he was a boy. So yeah, he was sweeping dust under the rugs and he would make corn with too much pepper, but he was so precious to Mamie. And the fact that she took that love, that dedication, that grief, and poured it into other people's children is the definition of brave. I couldn't have done it. I might have been a button maker or paper delivery person, or just kept my head down and worked as a secretary as Mamie did before, but instead she poured her life and love into children, using education as the medium to reach out, to make those connections with children. And she made sure that Emmett's legacy was never forgotten. That's brave. So with classes, I often define bravery with them. We will go to the internet and look up examples of brave. We will look at it as an adjective, verb, noun, and we will write the definitions and discuss. And then I love a Google search. We will do a Google search for quotes on bravery. These are some of my favorites. Bravery is not the absence of fear. Bravery is feeling the fear, the doubt, the insecurity, and deciding that something else is more important. That's Mamie. Scared is what you're feeling, brave is what you're doing. I think that's for all of us, for sure. And then Rebecca Ray says she was never quite ready, but she was brave, and the universe listens to the brave. That's inspiring. To know that we don't have to be superheroes, right? We don't have to do the big sacrificial climactic thing that changes the whole world in one step. We can do our own small things, this our own contribution, our own words, our own defense of another. We can do these small things, make these small choices, and still make a difference like Mamie did. We don't have to be Wonder Woman. We can be like Mamie. This class in Virginia did some synonyms, antonyms, and a list of people that they think are brave. I love that they included their teachers. It's tremendous. And then we ask, what does it mean to be brave? Not scared of anything, to believe in yourself, to try without doubt, to face your greatest fears, afraid but try your best. And then we commit to choosing brave. This mural says, I can choose brave. And students committed to being brave by signing their name on the mural. Signing their name to add their name to the class culture that says we can change the world. It's so positive and uplifting. And that's what we intended with this story. I think it's easy to shy away when we see the name Emmett Till on a book. Certainly it's something that I was afraid to write myself, because how do we do this and not cause fear or anger? How do we spin it so that it is encouraging? And the way we did that was focusing on Mamie's story of bravery, Mamie's story of resilience and strength and commitment to her son. So now when someone asks me, what does it mean to be brave? I no longer picture Wonder Woman. I now strive to be more like Mamie. In the editing process of this book, George Floyd was murdered in my hometown of Minneapolis, not far from where I graduated high school. And it was devastating for me. Minneapolis was my utopia, my safe place that was now being crushed. My nieces were standing on the freeway when the semi-truck drove through the demonstrators. And the place looked completely unfamiliar to me. So my inclination was to give up. I spent many days just in my bed, not wanting to do anything. But my editor, in her own pain, said, you know what, Angela? We have to choose to be brave. We just have to keep pushing, and we have to keep believing that there can be a better day, and we have to do what we can to make that day come fast. This book will help. And I truly hope that it does help. I hope that it helps to start the conversation in a way that is age appropriate and accessible to young people, in a way that opens people's eyes to the atrocities of the past, and is a bridge to what is happening today in our society. I think there was a time when something like Trayvon Martin could have been hidden from the children. We may have at one point been able to shelter them from these kinds of atrocities, but that time is not now. Unfortunately, we as educators, adults, parents, we don't have the luxury of sheltering them because we've got the internet. We've got 24/7 news. We've got camera phones that capture everything. And it's all about the views. It's all about the number of times that people watch something, so they'll share it with their friends. There's no way for us to contain our children in Eden any longer. And so my position is to not ignore the news that's out there, but to face it head on with facts and information and love. So I would rather have this lead to a conversation of what's happening with George Floyd and so many others at this point, than have them hear it just in isolation in their bedrooms on their own. That to me is worst case scenario. But if we as educators can bring a story like this to the children, if we can talk to them about how we can use our grief like Mamie has, how we can turn it into something positive, how we can be not just victims, but victors in these situations, I think that we can help them process the trauma that they experience via the news, via the current events. We don't have the luxury of ignoring it anymore. So my hope is that we can address these things head on with love, with books like these. And there are others, for sure. There are others that will add to the, I guess, the full exposure and education of civil rights and Jim Crow and all of that, certainly. And we can bring it into the future with discussions about bravery, about courage. But just the attempt to not shy away is so important. And you guys know that, or else you wouldn't be in this room. So I hope that this is a tool that we can use to help the children be brave, and also to inspire us to be brave in a time where not all, I have to be careful here, that not all teachers have the support to talk about things. I ask that we be brave and do what we can to help the children that need it most. So thank you. Are there any questions? I can't see anything, but I can hear through a microphone, and I believe we've got a couple people out there. If you have a question or a comment, I would love to hear what you think.
We are here, Angela. Wow. Wow. That's really powerful, right? Who has a question or a comment you would like to ask? I do have my copy of the book here, and I think Jen has hers as well. So if you want to see it firsthand, this one, there are a couple more copies, I think, available out at the bookstore.
I should say my agent would kill me. So in the back of the book, there is lots of back matter, lots of information. There's a timeline. There's a playlist. I always include a playlist in my books that kind of shows, we're talking about the jazz era where Mamie's father was a musician. So there's some Chicago jazz songs in there. I've included some songs about Emmett Till, the one I played at the top. And then there's also a song that talks about the train, the Mississippi train that brought Emmett south, which I thought was really interesting. So playlist is there. We've also got some information on what actually happened. There's a timeline of the crime that I think is very interesting. But for educators, Death of Innocence is Mamie's memoir. And that's a really, really good resource to get the full story for yourself, so that when children come and they ask questions, you will have the answers. It's a fascinating read.
And I think we have our first question over here on this side of the room.
When you teach this book or even read it with students, especially older students, I'm interested, what surprises you about their reactions?
You know, it's interesting. I've been prepared for negative pushback. I've been prepared for shock. I think what surprises me is their lack of shock. Ooh, I could cry right now because they have heard it. So they're not surprised to hear what happened to Emmett. They make the connection almost every time of Mamie with the other mothers of the movement who have spoken out, which that's pretty good. They are always interested in the whole story of what happened to Emmett. But again, there's sadness in the room, but there's not shock. And I think that's probably the most surprising thing that I've encountered. I think we become desensitized, and that's scary.
That is scary. You're right. Thank you for that. We've got another comment on this side.
Yes, I just want to make a comment. While you were speaking, I was texting one of my administrators, and he actually wants to come in when I do read this out loud, probably, hopefully next week. He actually came and presented about Emmett Till to my class because there was a whole bunch of like racism issues in our hallways and things like that. So he also presented pretty much a lot of things you said, and also that the mom chose to have at the funeral the body just how it was, so everybody could see the mutilation and the damage. So when you talked about brave, like that was even another like brave quite thing. But I wanted you to know that some administrators are very supportive. So thank you.
Thank you. That's huge. I was preparing for something bad, so I'm so glad that it has a happy ending. That's wonderful. That's wonderful. We were very intentional about the way that the illustrations were done in this book. We chose Janelle Washington. She is a paper cut artist, and she takes large pieces of black paper and she uses an X-Acto knife to cut out all of the details of her illustrations. The beauty of this art form is that it doesn't show like a ton of detail. So we don't have to show Emmett's body. We can show the silhouette, the shadow, and children will know without being horrified at an actual picture. If we had a painter or a sketch artist, we would not have been able to get away with that. And it was important to be truthful. So we knew we had to address the casket, but we wanted to do it with sensitivity. And so this paper cut art is a great way to do that. Janelle is quite good at expressing emotion in a positive and negative space. This is a great example. And of course, in the expressions that are cut out, you can really see a lot with the paper cut, but not so much that it's, like I said, scary or offensive for children.
Thank you. Another question on the other side of the room.
I was wondering, did you say you have access to giving us the slides for this?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, yes. I'm going to upload them tonight or first thing tomorrow morning so that they're available. Where they're available, I'm not sure. Ms. Saylor?
We will let you know.
Okay.
There's a Dropbox with all of the resources for the conference, and so we'll get them in there. Sound fair?
Sounds fair.
Angela Joy, I have a question for you. I had never heard the Rosa Parks Mamie connection. Do you have a primary source, and maybe it's in the resources that you're going to share, that could be super helpful for teachers as students learn about history as well?
Yes, so that is in Death of Innocence. Mamie told that story in her memoir.
Perfect, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions or comments from the room? Oh, I see one. I was going to race you, Jen, but I didn't think I'd win, so.
Thank you so much, Angela, for sharing this with us. I think as a classroom teacher, especially an ELA teacher and a social studies teacher, providing a context for teachers as well as students and telling that different story is fantastic. I definitely have to buy this book, but I was thinking, are there any other books in the works that you're writing that are similar to this? Like one of the first things I was thinking about is I think it's Fred Hampton, right? From the Black Panther Party, and how he showed bravery, right? In the story, that kind of through that movie, right? Opened my eyes a lot to how government was, you know the story. So, but just if there is any book similar to this one and choosing bravery to share with the world.
I love this story. It could be like a series of the different people who choose brave. Never thought of it. Thank you very much. I love it. My next book is totally different. It's about Prince Rogers Nelson, still geared for children with the main goal of, I guess, for the kid that feels like they're unseen, small, prone to seizures. Prince was not a candidate for cultural icon, but he took the pain from his childhood and used it again in art, and he changed the world with his art. So as an encouragement to kids who don't feel seen, I'm writing the story about Prince. But after that, I got nothing. So I love your idea. I'm going to borrow it. Thank you. It's beautiful.
So Angela, one other question. This session is for grades 6 through 12 is how it's listed in our program. Can you talk to us a little bit about if there are folks with who teach younger grades in the room? You know, ways
Samuel
to go-
Jackson, that's his name. Good gracious. Sorry. Yes, ma'am.
I know that feeling when you finally remember it.
For the love.
Can you talk to us about how you'd approach using the book differently if you are using it with younger grades versus the older children? Can you share some insights there with us?
So the book is printed as 3rd grade plus. And so obviously we have to know our own children, our own classrooms, but for me, I would focus on the kid-like features, the youthful moments of the book when he is chasing after the milkman, trying to collect the bottles to earn his money. What is a buffalo nickel? In the back of the book, there's a vocabulary section that will kind of hopefully cue you in on some of the things that younger kids might not know that we've talked about. So those moments, I think, help to engage the younger audience, the banana split. I wanted a whole chapter on banana split wars, but my editor said, no, thank you. But there's food in this book. There are, riding the bicycles. There's a reference to Emmit wanting mud hole days. What is a mud hole? What does it feel like? There's a lot of youthful parts of this book that are precious and teachable moments about the past. So I would tend to focus on those moments. And then when it gets to the discussion of Emmett's death, I think pictures are great, the primary sources that are here. And then really following their lead. I had maybe 3rd, 4th grade last week, and I did not intentionally go into what happened to Emmett. It was a room full of kids that were not mine, and so I didn't want to open a can of worms that I couldn't close myself. But the children were asking questions, and so that informed where we could go safely. And so I really just follow their lead. And then, of course, really, really focus on the bravery. What does it mean to be brave? The resilience part of it, because I think they can, they can really latch onto that. I think fear is pretty universal. So the fact that she did what she did while she was afraid is easily graspable, I think, relatable. So that keeps them engaged as well.
All right, I know more. I'm losing it here. I'm dying to know more about the Prince book.
It's called Ordinary Days. The sound, the songs, and the city that grew Prince Rogers Nelson. And I love it because when Prince died, there was a lot of press, of course, but nobody came to North Minneapolis, where I grew up, my hood. Prince's first house was half a block up from mine. So he grew up there, his mentors were there, he's running the streets there, but nobody came to us to say what happened, what was he like? They were, referencing old interviews that had nothing to do with who he was. So I'm really excited to share the more intimate origin story of Prince and give the community the recognition that it deserves in forming this musical genius. There's a lot of people and places that have been forgotten because the press has looked elsewhere for information. So I'm glad to shine some light on the community.
Struggling here. Do you have a timeline?
A
No
Prince
pressure.
timeline? I have a Prince playlist. Is that, I gotta have the playlist, but it's rated G. Family friendly.
We get a copy.
Nope, I didn't hear that.
Jen, help me out.
I think what I'm hearing is, when can we see the book? When can we hold the book?
Oh, end of this year, November-ish.
So we are still looking for additional, I'm sorry.
No,
Dr.
it's
Edwards.
okay. Angela, just want to say thank you for just an inspiring presentation. I was at the first one, and this one was even better. But I, too, am a huge Prince fan. I have made the Mecca. But I do want to say, since I'm interested in seeing the book, and you were talking about people going elsewhere, right, to get the story. And one of the things that I found in research, and you probably have seen it as well, but just thinking that might be when your book comes, I'm just preemptively thinking about when your book comes, there is a real short video that's out when actually the teachers in Prince's elementary school struck. They went on strike. Have you seen that video? And
I have. It's magic.
It is magic. And, I just, if you could include that for those grades where, I'm just saying, just giving a recommendation, right? It's a little crazy.
Help a sister out. I'm not mad.
I know. That's what I'm trying to do. But yeah, just wanted to bring that, just to your remembrance as you're thinking, as a way of, when you speak about bravery, right? Because you speak to the things that perhaps maybe were highlighted around how he wasn't seen, right? But even in the midst of whatever he was going through, he felt brave enough to stand in front of that TV camera in the midst of that political storm that was happening, and no one knew his future, right, or his destiny. But even at, 10 years old, he felt brave enough to speak his truth at that point. And someone, we're thankful, was there to capture that young man who didn't know his destiny, but acted brave in the moment.
Agreed. He spoke up for his teachers, which I just loved. I think the teachers deserve that extra pay for all because they work hard for us. I was like, oh my God, this baby. They just found that footage. If you haven't seen it, they just found it in the past maybe year or so, as they were looking through old footage about the Minneapolis teacher strike that was about to happen. They wanted to compare previous strikes to the one that was happening then. And a random editor guy came across this footage and said, wow, that kid looks like it could be Prince. And they did the research, asked some friends of his, and sure enough, that was Little Prince, and it had been buried all these years. So I love that he was standing up for his teachers in that moment. Just amazing. Thank you for that. I think that's a great idea.
So Angela, I have one more question I have to ask you. This book in particular has won quite a few awards. I was able to share them during your intro, but can you tell us about the significance of those awards and what they mean? Because I know they all have, I know we see these stickers and medals and decals on books a lot, and they're a huge honor, but just so we know specifically which you have won for.
Well, not all of the stickers will fit on the cover, but we are a Junior Library Guild Gold Selection. So that is an organization that chooses books every year that will be that will be winners basically for educators.
I learn a lot because
Do you hear that? Or hello?
We do.
We do, and I think we took care of it.
Okay. Okay. That was wild. So yes, the Junior Library Guild for recommendations for librarians. We've got the Sibert here, which is an honor for nonfiction work. The Caldecott Honor and the Coretta Scott King Honor are both for the excellent illustration of this book. We have the Walter Dean coming up tomorrow, and that Walter Dean Meyer Award for the We Need Diverse Books organization. And that is for outstanding nonfiction picture book for 2023. We've got the Stella Award, Bank Street Award for educators as well. So a lot of the love that we've received is from educators, which is beautiful to me because I write all of my books for educators. I want to package information, not just in the manuscript, but in the back matter so that a teacher who is obviously overworked and underpaid can just pick up this book and present, and the unit is there. Extra research is great if you got time, but if not, everything is right there for the educator to jump in and share. So to be honored by educators is the highest honor for us, for sure.
That is a perfect way to wrap up the segment because we want to honor you and we so appreciate your gift and your willingness to share it with all of us so that we can share it with the children. A round of applause, please.